Welcome to the Podium Athlete, the show where we bring together elite athletes and top coaches from around the world to dive deep into youth sports, mindset, and the pursuit of reaching the podium. I'm your host, Chris Fote, a three-time Olympian and the current head coach of the USA Bobsled team. Today, I'm joined by a true trailblazer, Akwasi Frimpong, the first Black male skeleton athlete to compete in the Olympic Games. Now he's chasing history once again as he trains for the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan. We'll explore Akwasi's inspiring journey from humble beginnings in Ghana to becoming a college track star, to founding his nonprofit, Hope of a Billion, which empowers youth through sports, education, and mentorship. We'll also talk about what it meant to carry his country's flag at the Olympics and how he continues to break barriers on and off the ice. You compete in the 2018 Olympics. You're going for these next ones, which are in less than 8 months.
Yes.
How is your training currently going?
It's up and down, but definitely going. As you compete for so many years, you realize that, right now for me, I'm 39, turning 40, when I do make it to my second Olympic Games.
Inspiring.
And so I'm not in my 20s anymore. So I have realized that, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and, how to work out even when, things are not going the right way in terms of injuries, that I still know there are things that I can do. So training is going really well. Obviously, it can always get better.
Okay. And one question I'm sure you get asked a lot, your sport, you slide head down on your face at 90 miles per hour, about this far off the ice. But right now it's 93 degrees outside. During this time frame, how do you train for your sport?
Yeah, I always explain to people that bobsled or skeleton is not, a sport where you have an actual track, a high school track behind your backyard where you can go practice. There's only about 17, 18 tracks in the world. And so it's difficult to train that in the summer, but there are things you can do, right? So I train a lot like a sprint athlete, a short sprint athlete. So I'm working on my speed. I'm working on my reactions, start times. I'm working on my strength, lifting, things like that. And then we also have an opportunity actually here in Park City, Utah, to do skeleton pushes, on basically we call the dry line pushes, where we have the opportunity to go down, basically on the rail, and that kind of brings us back, and that you can kind of practice that back and forth rather than just like pushing and then lying down there and there's no return.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess with that, what's kind of the breakdown? So I know the start of skeleton is extremely important. So you want to be as fast as you can off the hill, but it's a combination of, I would imagine, speed, power, and strength. So about how many times are you in the week in the weight room? How many times are you doing sprint training? And then how often are you up at that track up there in Park City?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people have no idea what we do in the summer. They just think we are a winter athlete. And, once winter comes, we just, take our helmet and our spikes and go on the hill. But there's a lot of different kind of training that are involved. So for me right now, it's about 3 days a week weightlifting, typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of lifting. I do a lot of like Olympic lifting, but also a lot of circuit exercises, which is basically, 3 different workouts, 3 rounds, and then you have different ones. And then in terms of running, I have a lot of ankle and Achilles kind of tendinopathy. So it's really tough for me to do a lot of running. I wish I could do a lot of running. As you and I both were former sprinters, we always think we're still sprinters, but we're not. So I try to do at least 2 days a week sprint if I can.
Okay.
I've also incorporated this season going to the physical therapist like twice, more so because of my ankle and Achilles injuries. I'm trying to do all the boring stuff with them because during my normal training, I don't want to do the boring stuff. And to stay disciplined, I try to do that. So 3 days a week sprinting, on the 2 days a week sprinting, 3 days a week lift, there's already 5, 2 times a PT, high performance, and not just like they're twisting your leg, they actually train you really hardcore. And then on the pushing side, right now, because of my Achilles injury, I'm only going twice a week, but we are able to go 5 times a week if we wanted to. So there's a lot involved.
Sounds very busy.
Yes.
Very busy. But I guess if you want to be, a Olympic athlete, that is just what it takes.
Absolutely.
I guess with that, how much heavier are you now as a skeleton athlete than you were when you were a sprinter? How much weight have you gained?
I think right now I'm about, I would say about 183 pounds.
Okay.
And as a sprinter, I think I was more in like the 169.
Okay, so
I would say
that's like
something,
15 pounds about?
yeah, about 15 pounds. I really try my, it's not the issue, but that's a little bit the challenge of like the different things you have to train for skeleton.
Yep.
And also because of some of my injuries, it's hard to do like 5 days a week sprints.
Yep.
But technically you're only going about, it's 50 meters, but you're really only sprinting about 30 meters. So it's really short sprints. So you're not doing a heavy or a lot of distance running.
Yep. Okay. So we'll kind of come back to this, I guess, what you're currently doing at the very end here. But what I really want to get to is kind of your childhood. You have a very unique story. You were born in Ghana, moved to the Netherlands when you were around 8 to 9 years old.
Yep.
And then you came over to America. You got a scholarship at Utah Valley University for track. But guys, tell me, let's start in Ghana when you're 8 years old. What sports or what was your athletic career like when you were that young, if you had one?
Zero.
Okay.
So my parents we didn't know what organized sports is. Obviously, we didn't have the money to do any of that kind of stuff. And so it was just really being foolish around the neighborhood, running around, watching Karate Kid movie and thinking that I could be a Karate Kid coach. And so there was not a lot of like sports involved. Obviously, I did go watch like soccer, things like that. As other people play, I was very inspired by other famous boxers in Ghana or track and field athlete. But I didn't have a lot of sport background in Ghana. So moving to the Netherlands is where I kind of discovered more so sports, organized sports, and joined a track club. But in Ghana, we lived in we come from a humble beginning. Yep. So my mom left when I was about 8 years old to the Netherlands to prepare a better future for myself, my brother Kofi. And in the meanwhile, my grandmother Minka took care of me, my brother Kofi, and 8 other cousins. And our situation was that we lived in a 1-bedroom space, about 4 by 5 meters. You can do that's metric, so you can do you can kind of do the measuring yourself in feet, but very tiny space, 1-bedroom space. We slept on concrete floors, had to share blankets with each other while water was dripping from my grandmother's ceiling. And my grandmother, had to walk miles and miles to be able to get us clean water. Sold her kente cloth, which is very luxurious for Africans to, they kind of keep that safe. It's almost like gold for them. It's a special clothing that they have. And she had to sell that so that we could have food to eat. And one thing that I always tell people is like, we didn't know when it was Christmas. The only time we knew it was Christmas was because we had to wear our Sunday clothes, and that's the only time we had a full bottle of Coca-Cola or a full egg on Christmas Day. So
never heard that before. So you ate a egg for Christmas, huh?
An egg and a full bottle of Coca-Cola. That was very luxurious.
That was a gift.
That was a gift, yes.
Okay. Well, I just want to point out, that's a great thing to hear, because I know, for instance, my son started playing baseball when he was 9, and I had so many parents saying it's already too late. He's already too far behind. Kids start playing when they're 5 or 6. I try and push back a little bit because I was the same way. I played sports growing up, but was on no travel teams. I didn't compete and get real serious about sports until my teens.
Yeah.
End up being a college track athlete, made 3 Olympic Games myself. I think that's really cool to hear that really your first 8 years, you were active, you were doing stuff, but you weren't playing an organized sport.
No, not till I went to the Netherlands and I discovered track and field when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
So I didn't stop running after that, but I didn't discover, actually that I had some type of talent in sports till I was discovered by my former coach, Sami Monsos, who was a great mentor to me, and that's when I started running.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about that. So you're in the Netherlands. Did you go to a tryout? Did he watch you on the street running? Or how did he see you running and say, I think this kid has potential?
That's a good story. I'm not sure if anyone has ever really asked me that question. But I was going to a junior high school in the Netherlands, and he always comes and volunteer as a track coach, because we had what we call like a PE track and field kind of a day once a year with our school. And so you try javelin, long jump, you try all kind of different track and field events. The long distance was not my favorite.
Yeah.
But on the short sprints, my track team or my classmates, we were part of a relay team, and we were behind quite a bit, like 20, 30 meters or so. And then when I got the baton, I chased that person and won that race. And that's when he discovered me and told me like, hey, you should try track and field. And I was like, track and field. Running is the punishment of any other sport. I don't want to do track.
Very true.
And my brother was always watching track on TV. Michael Johnson. Morris Green, like those people around that era. And he always thought that I could do track. And I was like, oh, no, because I was doing soccer then.
Okay.
And so long story short, when he recruited me is when I gave that a shot. And it took me 2 years before I actually went into it because I didn't go. But then when I saw him at the post office, he's bald. And I'm a little bit bald now too because I'm getting older. And I saw his head and I was like, oh, Coach Semi, I'm still going to be coming. And he's like, okay, we're waiting for you. Well, when I saw kids running at his track and field club, I was like, man, why they're going so fast? There's no way I can do that. That's way too fast. Well, I tried the next day and I beat every single one of them.
Okay.
I was like, oh, this is fun. And I had never won a medal before, so I didn't have any medal in my closet, anything like that. I was like, I want to be able to win something. I don't have anything in my closet. And so that's when I was inspired to win something. And I joined the track team, and within 18 months, I was the Dutch junior champion of 200-meter sprints for the Netherlands.
That's amazing. And walk that back just a little bit. So I know a lot of kids out there, there's always that fear for that tryout. The first time you try a brand new sport, you'd think you might not be that good. So obviously you're out there watching these kids zoom by. They have proper technique and proper form. I mean, how much angst did you have, or how much anxiety did you have before your first race or before your first practice?
I was super, super nervous, and the anxiety was up there. I remember there was just the fence, the gate around that track. It was under a subway. It's a really special track in the Netherlands, in a place called the Bijlmer in Amsterdam Southeast. And as I was watching them, like you said, they were going really fast, and I was just like, my heart was just pounding. And I was like, man, there's no way I can do that. And so I had to figure out my why I wanted to do it, right? And so for me, when I figured out like, hey, he recruited me, he thinks that I have it in me. I want to win something because my neighbor that I don't think is that fast won something. And I remember his name is Joel, and he showed me one time that he had won a track and field medal. And actually, to be honest, to tell you the truth, that's when I actually went there. And after I saw Semi that day, he showed me that he had won something. I was like, I want to win something. And so I was really nervous to go in there, not knowing that I can do it. And talk about proper shoe. The first day that I showed up, I was wearing my Sunday shoes. Like no joke, Sunday shoes. And
you probably felt some type of way about that when you realized you kind of made a mistake and you're like, wait, I probably wore the wrong shoes today.
Yes, I wore the wrong shoes, absolutely. And but I had a good coach, I had a good mentor who was really able to find ways to calm me down and to give it a shot, right? And to start me slow, start me at the beginning, and really build trust and build belief in me. That was super helpful.
So you're the Dutch 200-meter junior national champion. And then I guess what inspired you to apply for scholarships here in America? Because I've traveled to Europe quite a bit. I know their university school system is different than ours. Obviously, athletics here in America is huge. Every school has their own sport, their scholarships. What inspired you to want to come to the States to run? And then why did you choose the school that you did?
I think to go to the U.S., you know that if you want to become good at sports, that's the place to go to. If you want to become one of the best in the world, it's really cool, the system here in the U.S. and how that has been created to inspire kids to get the best out of themselves. And in Europe, obviously, it's too small. Financially, it's not really doable. But I was an undocumented immigrant in the Netherlands. When my parents brought me from Ghana to the Netherlands, and it was not a mistake. My parents were mistakes because some mistakes were made by the Dutch government, which is not to be controversial, but it was rectified years later. It took them like 13 years. And because of that, I couldn't, when I won the national championship, I was invited to represent the Netherlands at what we call the Queen's Game in Aruba. It's a competition between the Netherlands, Curaçao, and Aruba. And so I was invited at the age of 17 to compete, and I couldn't go because I couldn't travel. And so that was I couldn't show what I always say, my God-given talents. And so as I went to school, I found people around me to be like, hey, I need to leave. I really need to go out there and show my God-given talent. And so as I got into high school and graduated, I was looking for schools all over. And in the U.S., I got a lot of different scholarships from Michigan, Monroe, Arizona Sun Devils, UCLA. But UVA gave me the best scholarship because education was important to us as well. So I got, almost a full ride, and I took that opportunity to come here, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity.
And so you ran your 4 years at Utah Valley. Obviously, your track career ends, and then how did you get into the sport of? Well, you started out with bobsled first, if I'm not mistaken. So kind of walk us through your bobsled pathway as you tried to make, I think it was the 2014 Olympics.
Correct.
For the Dutch team in bobsled. And then how'd you make your way over to skeleton to then make the Olympics in 2018?
Yeah. Oh, what a journey. Oh man, just you mentioning that, I'm like, phew, we've been through a lot. So track and field was first my dream. I wanted to go to Olympic Games in track and field. And so my first close attempt was the 2012 Summer Olympic Games. I was part of the Netherlands pre-Olympic team training for the London relay team for the Netherlands.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, so I was part of like the team with Sharon Di Martina, right? Who did really well at one of the Olympic Games. And so I had a tendon injury. Injuries happen a lot, and because of that tendon injury, I didn't make the final team, the A team, basically, to go to the Olympic Games. Devastated, obviously. And then when I made it to the finish line, this you'll like this one. I was asked and really grabbed basically by Ivo, which an old colleague of yours,
Ivo de Bruin
with bobsled. He recruited me together with Nicola Minicello.
Yeah.
Nicola was the Netherlands team. Nicola was the world champion for the
Great Britain.
For Great Britain, and has been a wonderful. She's been really involved with the sport, bobsled and skeleton, and so she recruited me and Ivo in 2012. I remember the Olympic Stadium in the Netherlands, and then from there, I gave bobsled a shot. My first race, I'd never really done it before. Competed in Park City in the four men. Missed the finals by one spot because back then, it was 20 athletes could go to the finals. We were 21.
Oh.
But what a cool experience as the brakeman in the back. And then 2014, as you said, we were training with the Evo for the 2014 Olympic Games. The Netherlands has a really, really difficult qualification.
We do.
So we qualified on the international standard, the IOC standard. But the Netherlands, wants to make sure that you can make it in the top 8 or in the finals. And so they don't like to spend a lot of money on other sports. So so we had the opportunity so I became basically an alternate for Edwin van Kalker, who did make it for the Netherlands to the Olympic Games. Yep. I was a second alternate, and so I had to wait home till somebody else gets injured, get a phone call, and then go to Sochi. That never happened, which was a good thing because nobody got injured. But obviously, for the second time, I missed my dream again.
Okay. So I guess at that point, in 2 years, you had missed 2 chances to make the Olympic Games in first track and field and then bobsled. What inspired you to keep going? I mean, what was it about the Olympic dream that made you want to train so hard and pick up a new sport where, again, you slide down the hill 80 miles an hour this far off the ice? So I guess what inspired you to make that change of sport again? Because at this point, you're 28, 29?
Yeah.
What inspired you, or what gave you the faith to think that you could actually accomplish that goal?
It's a childhood dream, but it's also the Olympics was instilled in me by the coach that recruited me, Sammy Moses, in track and field. He believed that one day I could become an Olympian. Yeah. And because he believed in me, I worked really, really hard towards that. And so after I missed it for the second time, super, super devastated. And as you know, how much it takes to become an Olympian, how hard you work towards that. And when you miss that, or when you're that close, there's one thing of missing it and one thing of being close, both of them equally hard. And so I finished college at UVU, couldn't find a job right away, got into selling vacuums door to door, did that for quite a little bit. And then in 2015, my wife noticed that something was bugging me. And she said, "Babe, what's going on?" I'm like, "Babe, besides being married to you, right, there's one more thing." Be
careful,
right?
How you frame how you're not happy in life. So let's take note out there for all those husbands, fathers, and wives of how you frame this. But yes.
Absolutely. So besides being married to you, there's that one more thing on my bucket list to go to the Olympic Games. And, as beautiful as she is, supportive as she is, she looked into my eyes and said, "I don't want you to become 99 years old and still be whining about your Olympic dream. So let's go for it." So with her support, when she said, "Let's go for it," that's all I needed to know.
Okay.
So traveled back to Utah, where I was also asked again by Nicola to try skeleton. Okay. So I was then in Arizona. We were living in Arizona with our business. Moved back to Park City, tried it out, and scary, but definitely loved the adrenaline rush. And from there started to train for that, and decided that for me to really make it to the Olympic Games, my why needed to be big, and my why needed to be serious. It needed to be something that will wake me up every single day. Like, not saying that it didn't wake me up before, but now for the third time, going up after for the third time, The why needed to be big. And so I decided, you know what, I want to compete in my country, Ghana.
Yep.
And in my thought, I was like, hey, it's going to take me like 8 years to make it to the Olympics, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to train for, for the Olympic in 2018, but I was actually aiming for 2022. I had a T-shirt that, that says Beijing 2022.
Yeah.
I was promoting myself, trying to get sponsorship and
Manifesting
crowdfunding.
it to happen.
Yeah, and I know it's going to take a while. So that was my goal. And so I trained super hard for Startup Federation for Ghana. Nobody has ever done it before. Ghana has gone to the Olympic Games once with skiing, but never with skeleton or bobsledding. So I started that. That was a big why, to be able to do something for my country, something that no one has ever done before, and give hope back to people back home of what's possible. And so with the help of so many other people, trained super hard. Luckily, I had something called a continental representation, where basically every continent gets a spot as long as you meet the minimum requirement, which is top 60 in the world. Okay. You have to do 5 races on 3 different tracks. Long story short, made it for Africa and competed in 2018 Olympics after 17 years dreaming of the Olympic Games and missing it in 2012 and 2014.
So let's keep this thread for a minute, because again, I competed in 3 Olympic Games. Again, you grew up with this whole dream, envisioning what the Olympics is like. So what was it like? You were obviously chosen to carry the flag at the opening ceremonies. Give us a little bit about what that feeling felt like, walking in there from Ghana, a country that historically does not have a lot of representation at the Winter Olympic Games. And what did that mean for your family, for your country, and just kind of describe that feeling that kind of made, like you said, that long journey worth it?
When a lot of people ask me, like, what is the greatest part of your career or for the Olympics? Yeah. And, a lot of people think that me sliding head first was that. And obviously, yes, that I finally made it down and could call myself an Olympian was huge. Yeah. But for me, the greatest part of the Olympic Games or my experience was waving the flag of my country. Yep. That was the coolest experience ever. Like, got the chills, like walking that opening ceremony in the arena and waving that flag, the flag that my ancestors had shed tears and blood for our independence and worked extremely hard for it. It was my time to make the continent, but also my country, super proud. The country of Ghana, and then obviously the continent of Africa. Yep. And send a message back to all these kids back there, walking on barefoot like I did to go to school, that there is hope, and there is, regardless where you come from, with your circumstances, anything is possible as long as you work hard, believe in yourself, and never give up.
Yes, that's a great point to make. And I think I was there at those Olympic Games. I can tell you Akwasi was a fan favorite. He had a dance he was doing. Everyone was talking about it. I kind of felt, watching the movie Cool Runnings and when I was a kid, and I feel like you were kind of received in that, same type of light. Yeah. Where this kid who had obviously come from very humble beginnings, as you laid out, but we're at this stage. That's why I love the Olympic movement, because the Olympic movement is you have people from all these different countries come together. And one thing people don't talk enough about is in the village, one of my favorite things was going to eat meals, because you could be sitting by someone from Iran, China, North Korea, New Zealand, the amount of languages that you're hearing, the amount of conversation you have, and just hearing their stories. But again, I've 3 Olympic Games, never saw a fight in Olympic Village. It's just the camaraderie in the spirit of Olympic Games is so strong. And that's one thing I love, is how proud athletes are wherever they come from to support their nation and their flag.
How you laid it out there just gave me goosebumps. Yeah. Gave me a lot of great memories, and it's like, oh man, I want to experience this one more time.
Which is what's driving now. But I want to jump quickly to what you kind of had mentioned earlier, and the hat that you're wearing now. You kind of face that camera and kind of, if you could show people. So this is a nonprofit that you started, Hope of a Billion. Yep. Did you start this after the 2018 Games, or when did this kind of come to be? And give us a little bit about what that is and what you're doing with that. You can kind of talk to the camera.
I've always had the idea of giving back. My first plan of starting a foundation started in 2012. I have a whole plan laid out of what I wanted to do, and the reason why I always wanted to give back is, as you heard my story, I was inspired by so many people. One is my grandmother, but also my coach Sami, who always put so much effort and time and helped me believe in myself. And I noticed that if you have someone that can just say, hey, I believe in you, man, that's huge, right? And so for me, that thought was always in my head of like, I wanted to challenge myself to always find ways to give back and to be able to help people, be able to experience like what it is like to make their dream come true, right? And to understand what it takes for that. So long story short, after the 2018 Olympics, obviously a whole community was behind me of what I did. A lot of people supported that. But then in 2022, a film came out called Black Ice by a company called On Running that started that film. And the film was used in South Africa by teachers to teach kids about resilience, going after your goals and dreams and things like that. And when we saw that, my wife and I saw that, we we always wanted to give back, but now this is a proof of concept that already exists and we want to amplify that. So in 2022, we brought a bunch of people together from Canada, in the US, all over, a lot of great board members to kind of sit down and think about this process or think about this initiative. And we started the Hope Will Burn Foundation, and our mission is to basically empower, engage with 1 billion lives in underserved communities worldwide through sport, business, and education opportunities. And we believe that hope and motivation are essential for self-actualization. So
Yes.
we basically create a supportive environment for these kids through sports mentorship.
Yep.
And through life skills, essential skills where they can cultivate their inherent power, what they have to go after their goals and dreams. Just like my grandmother told me that, of course, what you need for success is already in you. It is a matter of believing yourself, having the will to work hard and never give up. So I do understand that I have it within me. And so I need to find people around me to help me get that out and to be able to chase my goals and dreams. So we go all over the world, especially in Africa, USA, and Ghana. We're in South Africa, we're in Ghana, and the Utah as well, where we go to schools all over and we teach kids about the power of resilience, to teach them about how to become resilient, because they are going to go through a lot of tough times, but they do have to understand that it is possible for them to achieve their goals and dreams. So we kind of help them with that concept and that tools that they need to be able to thrive and reach their goals and dreams.
That's very powerful. That's why, I wanted you on here as a guest, because the impact you made obviously in sport, but the impact that Akwasi is making out of sport is just absolutely huge. And I think, working with youth, I think that's one thing. If I could, when I talk to youth, and I usually, I get invited to speak to some schools and high schools and teams, and that's one thing that I always talk about is the confidence you need to have as a kid. It's easy to not be confident because you make mistakes, you don't have that perspective yet, and you think, oh, I am done, or this is the end of the road, we lost this game. And it's amazing to me, like every athlete from Michael Jordan to Tom Brady to, Serena Williams, every professional athlete, very few of them, I would say none of them had this trajectory where it was always up. There's always going to be downs. And so overcoming those is absolutely huge. And with that, I guess I'll transition to, you made the 2018 games, and obviously you were riding on a high. You had all these sponsors. You had some really good things going for you. And then you did not make the games in 2022. It was a tough one because I know there was COVID. There was the tour was kind of difficult. And I've heard stories. I was not competing at this time, but the horror stories of testing positive and then not being able to race, and just, it sounded like a pretty messy time. So you reached your goal in 2018. Obviously you thought you were going to do it again in 2022. You did not. So what has been your why, and how have you, I guess, built that resilience to now continue training, trying to make 2026?
Yeah, I have to say that it was super tough on me and how it happened. And, I was ready to throw in the towel, right? And again, was reminded again about my grandmother's words, but also most importantly, for me, I wanted to compete again. I've made my dream come true. Went to the Olympic Games. It was really tough to reach that as a small nation athlete, and could be done. Had great sponsors, but I really wanted to showcase, that I got better as an athlete. I really wanted to leave a record behind that, would be one that people would thrive to reach, from an African level, basically keep having representation in the sport in Ghana and Africa. That wasn't happening, and God have the best plan, and God's timing is the best timing. And it was just not my timing. And obviously COVID was one thing. Qualification was extremely hard. A lot of things changed. There was no more continental representation spot. So missing it and being, 2-3 weeks in a hotel in Germany, not allowed to compete in my last 3 races to earn the points I needed, was really tough for me. And the question that you asked, what was your why? I have to say that my why was really that film Black Eyes that came out. I remember that my wife really wanted me to be done because it's I'm probably preaching to the choir here. It's a lot of traveling. You're gone a lot. She has to do a lot on her own, and it's very expensive. And she definitely wanted me to be done. And I was ready to retire after 2022. That was the goal. And so when we saw the film and what the film did to so many people all over the world, especially kids, I realized that this was an opportunity for me to continue that journey and show it one more time. And I also feel it just in me that I have one more Olympics in me. And again, like I said, if God timing is good, I'll make it to the next one. If not, I'm still grateful for what I've done so far, and will continue to be involved in empowering kids and youth all over the world.
No, that's great. And I think you've mentioned this movie, Black Eyes 4. Where can the audience go and view this movie?
I'm sure if you type in Black Eyes on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of different things. So type in Black Eyes and then my name, Akwasi, Akwasi, and you'll find a 12 minutes kind of graphic novel film that hopefully will inspire you to chase your goals and dreams.
I appreciate that. And speaking of chasing goals and dreams, now you've added some members to your pack. You have 2 daughters, one 8 and one 4. Okay. So I guess as a father, and you obviously grew up playing sports, your wife also did sports, and you also coach their sports from what I'm hearing. What sports are they currently enrolled in? And I guess let's start with that one. What sports are they currently doing?
They have done gymnastics. They have done other sports. I'm not sure how it is for you, but my wife being an athlete, former BYU long jumper, she competed at UVU as well, and then went to BYU. So I don't know if I should do thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm just kidding. We love BYU. But people are always like, oh yeah, your kids are going to be athletes, right? And then obviously for us, we always make the joke, like, I'm sure she's going to come up to us and say, Dad, I want to play the violin, right? And that'd be totally fine as well. So both of my kids, especially my 8-year-old, has always been an artist. She's always into artists, making boxes with things and drawing and all that kind of stuff. And we always say that's important, to be an artist, and it's nice, and we support you in that, but you also have to move your body. But so they've tried different sport, karate kids, they've done gymnastics, but currently they are doing soccer. The 4-year-old is doing soccer, and then the 8-year-old is doing track.
Oh, cool.
And she's doing track, and then she's also in Shanti's doing track, and what else is she doing? She's doing track, dance. Sorry, that's the other one. And she's in dance as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some expectations for your kids. Their parents were college athletes. You made the Olympic Games. I guess, how do you balance that with your kids, and how do you keep them mentally focused, I guess, and wanting to try? And also as a parent, they're going to tell you all the time they don't want to practice today, they don't do this. So how do you balance like making them practice, because knowing that down the road, that's what they need, and they need a little bit of pushing, but also not trying to force it on them if they don't want to do it?
Yeah, kudos to my wife mainly, and obviously I will say kudos to myself too a little bit in this, because we have really not pushed our kids to do sports.
Okay.
We have always like, hey, obviously mom wants to get them out of the house, so we need to put them into something. So we've tried the different things, but again, we didn't notice that they really wanted to do it. One of the things my daughter always said is that the only way I'm going to do sports or different sport is if you coach.
Okay.
So that was like the agreement is like that, okay, I will do sports if you coach. So it has become a thing of that has to be involved. And obviously as we travel a lot, it's difficult to do, but we never push it. And because they always try, kind of don't want to do it, and they don't really want to do it. But then suddenly, like recently, like it just, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's an age thing or because I don't know what it is. They obviously see me competing and things like that. But she's doing track now and she's loving it. And it's like, you don't have to push her. And it's like, because we never pushed her, I think. And now I get involved in like, okay, hey, let's work on some technique stuff. Now I'm bringing that in there, but not too much, because that should be a coach. But what they're actually asking is that we don't want you to be a coach and tell us what to do. We just want you to be a cheerleader and a supporter. That's hard.
And I really want to pull on that thread a little bit, because I kind of feel that exact same way. I feel the pressure with club teams and the way sports is now, they're competing in these big tournaments. I think we're putting a lot of pressure on kids to win really young. And I think for me, again, sports is competitive. The goal is to win. The goal is to be first place, to make yourself reach the podium and be the best in your sport. But I also know young kids, they need to play, they need to have fun. And so for me, that's part of the reason why I started the Podium Athlete, is to help kids focus on just sports, just to play and give them more resources and more opportunities to continue playing, and then allow them to find themselves and find their passion as they go.
Yeah, and I have to go back to that as well, because I think that in the beginning, when we wanted to put them in sports and they know that is an Olympian and that is training and things like that, that they felt like, oh, I have to be good. Oh, I have to win. I now that you're just telling me this, it's just, coming up now. they have a little bit of that pressure, which we didn't give them, but maybe they felt that way. They're like, okay, well, if I go competing something, I have to win.
Yep.
Because my dad is an Olympic athlete, you know, and even though we had never had that conversation, I think that's there. But now that we have told her like, hey, you know, we just want you to give it a try. Just come out of your comfort zone. We always laid out there that it doesn't matter if you know, for example, her dance, she's always been doing dance for like the last 3-4 years, on and off. And then my wife always like, hey, do you want to enter into, they call it like you can try for competition, you know, so the dance group has a competition team. And for 3 years, she said no, she doesn't want to be involved in the competition part of stuff. But now that we said, hey, I sat down with her, I was like, hey, Ashanti, give it a try. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you tried it. And we kind of played a little bit that way, like coming out of your comfort zone, learning something, right? And then she tried out and made it into the category of, you know, she's 8 and she made it into like the 10-year-old category.
That's amazing.
And it built confidence. And then when she goes, she feels that confidence and she's just still playing. And it was a rod of like, I'm just going to have fun. And then, you know, now that I feel like I want to give it a shot, I do understand that it might go not the way I want it to go. I'm already knowing that. And then that's the same thing. Then we said, hey, do you want to try track? Many years she would never do it unless I coach. And then now she tried it and now she wants to go all the time and I don't have to push her, right? So, it's a journey for sure.
No, again, and I love what you said. I think being a cheerleader for your kids is amazing. I think, and even for the coaches out there, and, you know, I coach my son's baseball team. I coach soccer teams. I'm also the head coach for the USA Bobsled team. So I have a pretty wide range of athletes. I think but a lot of it is just being encouraging. And even in practice, there's a time to be able to, people have a hard time being really focused for 2 hours straight or 3 hours straight. So here to practice, what I've tried to do and what I found very useful is, you know, have moments and you tell your athletes, hey, right now when we're doing the warm up or playing catch, you guys can talk and joke and have fun. I want you to do that. But when it's time to do this for 10, 15 minutes, we're going to hit or do these drills. I want you guys to be locked in and focused.
I'm learning a lot today.
And then when we're done with that, let's go get some water break. Let's do a drill that's maybe light. Let's do some relay races. Let's do some fun things. And let's come back. All right, now we're going to do this, pop-ups. We're going to keep track. If you miss, you have to do a push-up. Kind of make it fun for the whole team.
Oh, so cool.
So I found that because I've seen these coaches and I see these kids, and even coaching Little League this year, baseball, the amount of tears I saw on some teams, I'm proud to say, you know, we had kids disappointed. Obviously, kids cried on my team, but it was because they felt bad and they felt that pressure and stress. It was never because I felt like we put extra pressure on them. And I watched some other people, I won't name names, but it's tough to see these parents or the coaches themselves just putting so much pressure on their kids. And it's a fine balance.
So I started coaching my I've coached my daughter's soccer, who's 8 years old, back in the day when she was like 3 or 4. Now my 4-year-old, she says the same. Dad, you know, she doesn't really want to do it. Soccer, we have had to do it. And then she always plays like 1 minute and comes back for the water break thing and the snack thing. And then she doesn't want to be there, right? And we like so frustrated a little bit, but we don't let her see that. We're like, why are we even coming here? But we kept supporting her. And then obviously she's like, Dad, I want you to coach me. So now I'm part of the, you know, I'm coaching my 4-year-old soccer, you know, 3, 4 years. It's a really interesting group. And my little 8-year-old comes in and helps coach too.
I love
right?
that.
So, but I'm learning a lot and it's just having fun with them. And for me, you know, it's not any pressure that I'm putting on them. Obviously, you know, like you said, when it's time to do a certain drill or certain things. But I remember there was, you know, I gathered all this 3, 4 year and I told them, you know, my first time of coaching them, I said, hey, there's 3 things I want you to remember. You know, first one is to be kind of respectful to your teammates and to the opponents as well. Second thing is like, you know, we're going to play as a team, right? We win and lose as a team. And then third thing is that, you know, make sure that you're always, you know, kicking the ball the other direction. And then my wife was there. You know what she said after I was done? She's like, and fourth thing is we're going to have fun. I'm like, oh yeah, babe. I forgot that one. I was too much in the coaching, you know, athlete mode. Thanks for reminding me that. But it's important to keep that fourth reminder of like, have fun.
It is. I think, and that's what, to me, and again, why I want kids to play sports for longer. You know, I built lifelong friendships competing in sports. I built resiliency. Those days you play a team that's really good and you lose 12-0, you're just like, that kind of sucks. And there's times where you don't want to practice. You learn how to overcome that mental block as I'm tired, and you say, no, you're going to go practice today. And they go out and they practice, and you learn, okay, that wasn't that bad. That was actually fun. You build leadership skills because you're with peers. And I think just body awareness and the body positivity you gain from learning how to be coordinated. And again, I can't preach enough how much sports have helped me. So I've been saying thing. I'm trying to balance pushing my kids to excel, but also just having the fun part of it. I'm glad your wife brought that up. I have the same thing. I remind myself that they're 8, they're 6. No one's getting chosen for the major leagues today. No one's going pro in baseball or basketball. There's no scouts at your kid's 8-year-old team. Puberty hasn't, happened yet. Your kid might grow 10 inches. They might not, and they might not be able to do that.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important to keep that perspective in mind.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's great, man. Well, shifting back to kind of the Olympics here. Well, actually, let's stay on this thread just for one more minute. So obviously you're a track coach. Speed and power go into all sports your kids play. So give us 1 or 2 drills or 1 or 2 workouts that you like to do with your kids.
It's drills that I was learned by my coach Sami. One of the important, very simple drill is how to move your arms.
Okay.
And I believe that any movement with that arm helps us to relax, helps us to accelerate, helps us to have proper form. So always sitting down with them, like sit down and go like movement like 1.
Yeah.
Okay, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Because obviously when she's moving, obviously she likes to go right here.
Just keep real tight.
Real tight. And so I think that if I can, obviously there's a lot of different things you can teach. And again, I'm not a pro track coach, but I've always realized, even in my sport of skeleton, that reminding me to be relaxed is so important in sports. So teaching them like how to move your arms, how to move your legs, how to sink. Like the very simple thing is one of the drills. And obviously the basic of like, A skip, B skip kind of things like that. I've always learned to keep things basic, and obviously there's a lot more things you can do, but at that age is to keep things basic.
Yes.
They're not going to have the best form, anything like that, but if you can teach them 1 or 2 things. So, one of the things my daughter reminds now is hip to lips, hip to lips, right? Hip to lips, right? Just remember that, or from coach, Coach Edwin Randolph.
Oh, yeah.
Coach Randy. Right? 1, 2, 1, 2. So my wife was also coached by him, he's a great coach, has coached all of us. Former BYU track coach from Ghana. And so the whole thing of like, 1, 2, 1, 2, just rhythm, arm movement, simple stuff is what I like to do with them.
All right, I love that because, again, I just posted a video yesterday. I take my kids to the track and we work on, I don't call it a speed ladder because I don't think those ladders make you faster, but I call them agility ladders because kids learn the body awareness. Okay, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, and watching them, and you can see them
the brain
connect the dots. My son started like the same leg, the same arm. Oh wait, no, it's opposites. But then my kid, who's now 8 and 10, they're actually doing these drills, and it took a while. That's cool. Sometimes it's being patient. I go through the drills, and you just allow them to have fun. I do it with them too, so it helps keep me in shape. And so it's been really fun. So I challenge a lot of parents out there. If you don't have a lot of expertise, there's a lot of fun drills that you can do, and we will post some on our app and on our website. Take your kids to the track, run stairs, run hills, and just do some of these body awareness type of stuff because it will apply to soccer, lacrosse, track and field, football, baseball, and just teaching kids coordination and get them to move, whether it's dance even.
No, for sure.
Absolutely huge.
Like even when we do some workouts on the track, when I was like with them on the track, we'll sometimes do a lot of things that is not specific track, right? Just to keep them moving, to make it fun.
Yes.
And I think that that's kind of keep them, they want to keep coming back because it's fun. Because again, nobody really wants to just run except, Kipchoge or like,
the cross country distance folks that we all know for being track athletes ourselves.
A lot of respect, but
they're a whole different breed. They really are. They're phenomenal athletes and mentally insanely strong, but they are a different breed.
So much respect for them. And the joke I always made as a track and field athlete is like anything above the 400 meters, because I did the 1 and 2. I think you did 1, 2, and you did 4. You had a lot of records at UVU that everybody was trying to beat for many years.
And have beat them since, which is great.
A lot of respect for you, Chris, and what you've done in different sports. But I think it's so important to just give it a shot and try it out, and hopefully somebody will break those records. But I know you worked really hard for those records.
It was good, and that's not and it's funny too. You look back on obviously being a Olympic athlete and the growth mentally from being a 20-year-old kid running track to being in your late 20s, early 30s at the Olympic level, and kind of I think the Olympic movement's done a really good job, and even sports in general, talking about the mental aspect and how important it is to have confidence to visualize things. So I guess let's jump there. Going into 2026, I guess, what are some things, what's the number 1 or 2 things you think you need to really try and do these next couple months in order to prepare yourself when we're on ice here in October, November timeframe? So what's 1 to 2 things that you're going to really try and focus on over the next few months?
If we get very technically on the push, which is my strength, but yet there's so much to be learned. You can be the fastest track and field athlete, which I believe, technically in terms of 100-meter times,
Yep.
right? I ran a 10.45. I'm probably one of the fastest doing the sport in track, and there's a lot more that have done 10.1, 10.2. I know you have done probably 10.3, 10.4 yourself, but bending over and doing it is a different thing. There are people out there that are not sprinters.
Uncomfortable.
There are people that are not sprinters that can still beach because they have the technique. So I think that for me, the first 5-10 meters is super important. My steps are still a little bit short, but I'm trying to find balance between, the cadence versus trying to have bigger steps, right? There's you got to find a fine balance. So I'm trying to, work on that first 10 meters, because after that, I feel like I pretty much have that. And obviously the loading is important. So that's part of the pushing. So working on those a lot as much as I do my sprints, understanding that, yes, I'm doing sprint, but also incorporate what the movement feels like when I'm doing skeleton. And then outside of that, the sliding, most of the coaches have told me, dude, you know what to do, right? I'm sure you tell your athletes that too. You know what to do. Don't make it too complicated. Don't overcomplicate. You know what to do. And so for me, a big thing is keeping my shoulders down. I don't have the typical skeleton body. I have more of a 4-man or a brakeman, a lot of muscles, and so I don't have the aerodynamic body of a skeleton athlete per se. So for me, it's really every night right now, since this past season, every night I take 5 minutes, I lay on my carpet, I put my phone up for a minute, and then keep my shoulder down, keep my head up like I'm always holding a pencil, and I'm just working on that 3 times, 3 to 4 times. About a 5 minutes session, because I feel like that's a weakness of mine, to help me really stay focused and really keep my shoulders down for aerodynamic positioning. So I'm working on that while I'm not on the track, right? So things that you can do outside of just specific training. And obviously the mental part has always been a huge thing for me. Chris, I've learned that the greatest weapon, right, that you have is your mind, right? And so it's about training your mind to see opportunities other than obstacles. And so I do understand that I have injuries. I have, I don't have per se always the resource, the financing, the coaching, right? And there's a lot of things, but I'm trying to see opportunities and to keep my mind strong, because that's what I think I have been able to utilize. I'm not the most talented skeleton athlete out there, but I feel like that's my strength, and I'll continue to work on that mental strength and have people around me, mental coach, a sports psychologist that I work with as well. So
okay. I just want to highlight that to all the people out here that will listen to this. And I think that's one of the biggest things that changed for me as well when I transitioned from a high school athlete to then a college athlete and now a Olympic athlete, is really just how much work is done off of the practice field. Beforehand, when I was in high school, I showed up to practice 2 hours, and I was at home playing N64 or hanging out with friends, which was fine. You need those downtimes too. But as I got into college and then into the Olympic movement, I realized, taking care of your mind, your body, nutrition, it doesn't have to be, you don't need to practice for 6-7 hours a day. Like you spend 5 minutes doing a drill at night. You spend 10 minutes in the morning doing some work in core and just trying to stretch and get some things done. I think that's really what I've seen has made the difference between good athletes to great athletes to elite athletes. It's really taken that extra time and doing those small things, not necessarily in practice, but after practice on your own time, that will make you better eventually than your peers.
I love to train, right? And so it's really complicated for me when I'm not allowed to train for 1 or 2 days. Imagine when you do like a PRP treatment, you have to wait like 3 weeks before. And I don't like it. Mentally, it's really hard for me. But I've learned to be patient more and more. I've learned that, last season was a good one. I did a surgery in June 2024 of an injury that we discovered that I was born with, fused bone in my ankle. And I was like, man, how am I going to make it to that season? I'm probably not going to compete. And then we had a world championship come out. Like, there's no way. There's really no way after coming back from a surgery from June that I have to start competing in November. And then first of all, I had great support and good people around me, and I made the world championship, right? But I had one of the fastest push. But I knew even though I didn't do a training all year round, I knew the exact things that I needed to do to be able to make it.
Yep.
That taught me like, you don't need to train 24/7, Quaz, you know,
Yep.
right? You got to do the things that you need to do, right? And so, you know, recovery, you got to recover as hard as you train as well. And that's something that I have to say that
Recovery is huge.
I have to say that I have more and more learned over the years. It's still really tough for me, I have to say, Chris, but it's one that I'm like, if you miss that one day, it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna be the end of it.
Yep.
But it's about what are you doing in that one day? Are you doing stretches? Are
Yep.
you working on your mind?
Yep.
Are you doing some form of recovery? Are you doing maybe a core? What are you doing
You
when
can still get better every single
you can
day.
still get better? 1% every single day.
Yeah. There's one thing about, I'm a little jealous of your sport of skeleton. You guys get to kind of design your helmets, custom helmets. It's a big part of your sport. In bobsled, we're all tucked down. You can't really view our helmets because we're praying that we don't crash, and we're getting as low as we can. You can't hide. So you guys have some great helmets. So you brought yours today. Can you pull that down for me, kind of explain why you went with that, helmet?
Yeah.
Because it's really, really cool.
Yeah, this is called the Rabbit Theory helmet, and I designed this for the 2018 Olympics because again, it was the story behind it was inspired by my coach Sammy Moses, who's the one that inspired me to get into sport and instill the Olympic dream in me. And he always described me, as a rabbit. Now you see a rabbit here.
Okay.
So he described me as a rabbit in a cage, ready to escape, ready to basically run away from a lion. And the whole concept has to do with the fact that there's a cage with the rabbit, and when the cage opens up, the lion is trying to eat up that rabbit. And so he said, Akwasi, you're not going to become an Olympian yet. Like, you're not ready yet. You have to learn how to escape out of the jaws of the lions. And the lion, in this way, it's a metaphor, is basically haters. People that don't want to see you succeed. In my case,
There are always lots of those.
in my case, it was like the Dutch immigration officers, right? And so so for me, after dreaming of the Olympic Games, missing in 2012 and 2014, and finally after 17 years making it, I really want to tell my story through my helmet at the Olympic Games, that, the rabbit is free. And after 17 years, I finally became the rabbit my coach always wanted me to be, and I escaped out of the jaws of the lion.
That is very, very powerful, Kwasi. I'm very glad that we did that, and that is a awesome story. And the last thing I want to touch on, I got a couple more questions at the very end, but last kind of thread with this, the Olympic thread. I think you have a really cool story in the sense of you being the first athlete from Ghana. There's no coaches you can hire from your own, from Ghana to help you. So I know you've had to outsource coaches, and recently you made a partnership with the Chinese team.
Yep.
And you kind of travel with them, you get coaching from them. And again, I think that's one of the coolest things to point out about the Olympic Games. Although we're competing against each other, the camaraderie among these countries is amazing, and I love to see it. So just kind of give us a quick background of what has that been like, kind of traveling and training with the Chinese team.
Great. I also have to give, kudos to, Coach Zach Lund, that competed in the Olympic Games 2010 came in fifth. And he's one of the first coaches that, really helped me get to the level I am now. And others have, carried on with that. But I'm traveling with the Chinese team in the World Cup circuit, and specifically with Coach Dirk Mutchens. He's like one of the, arguably one of the best skeleton coaches in the world. Coached the German team for over 12 years, Russia, and then China. And it's been such a blessing to be able to have a coach that knows what he's doing. Our sport is you can be talented as much as you want, but there's a lot of secret in that sport, man. Yep. It's like, what runners, the blades on the
sleds, technology.
There's so much around that I have no idea about, right? No matter, you can't be in the sport long enough to figure this all out on your own. So having that opportunity to travel them, to get some support from them, coaching, is such a blessing. I'll never take it for granted. Yeah. That type of support, the camaraderie, that people help you out as a small nation, and they love having me around because then it's fun too, because they can get very serious. Yeah. And so I remember Coach like, man, they love when you come because then they can make some jokes and stuff. So now feeling very blessed to be able to that opportunity, and I see there's more small nations that have seen that and like, man, Kwaz is getting better. Kwaz is getting better, man. Maybe I need to find that type of So people are doing that same too, and I see more small nations doing really well. Yep. And that showcase that camaraderie and that support that we have in that sport.
That's awesome. So speaking of coaching, I guess a question I want to ask you is obviously you've had some phenomenal coaches throughout your entire life. For the interest of time, pick, I guess, one coach that's had the greatest impact on you, and what was the one lesson you kind of pulled? Obviously you pulled lots. What's the most important lesson you pulled from that coach?
I have to say Coach Sammy Monsos, the track and field coach at Recruit Me in the Netherlands. I've learned so much from Coach Sammy. And, one of the things that he has taught me is to turn the negative into something positive. Always figuring out how to turn that thing around. You can't stay too long in that negative mood. It's totally fine to feel sad when things don't happen for you, to go hit walls if you need to hit walls or whatever. Don't hit walls at home. But whatever you need to do, but it's how quick can you come back from that disappointment? And that's where you can win. If you can learn how to come as quick as possible back from that disappointment is a huge thing. And, I've also said that, along with that, he's also taught me about, you can have a dream, but you have to have goals, and how do you work towards that, right? So one of the quote that I learned from Denzel Washington is that dreams without goals, are just dreams. Yep. And ultimately they feel disappointment. So on your road to achieving your dreams, you must apply discipline and consistency, because without commitment, you will never start. And without consistency, you will never finish.
Yep. Deep. I love that. I just want to put further tug on that thread again, just of every athlete in basketball, football, they don't score a touchdown every single play. They don't make a basket. No one shoots 100%. You're going to make mistakes. And being able to, especially in a game, to not let one mistake impact a 12-minute game or a minute trip down the ice.
Yes.
And then, too, I love what you said, too, is the great athletes that I've met, they are gifted, they have talent, but above what makes them elite and podium-type athletes is their consistency and discipline. Days they don't want to work out, days they don't want to train. That is what they really do, and that's what really, I think, makes a difference between good athletes, great athletes, and elite athletes.
Absolutely.
It's just that. Two other quick questions is, because again, I really want parents and kids to listen to this podcast together to learn some lessons. If you could go back and give your 10-year-old self, 12-year-old self some time frame of advice, what would you give that you might help the current 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds trying to find their way in sport and deal with these ups and downs? What kind of hope or what advice can you provide to them?
Wow, that's a deep question. I wouldn't change anything that has happened in my life, but however, I would say that learning to come back from disappointment and failures and how you are able to work on that, right? If you can really find a way to make mistakes, to fail, for things, to go sideways and come back from that, and how you do that, there's a lot of ways to do that, right? Find the right people around you, right? Trying again and again and again and not giving up, right? But I think learning how to fail, learning how to make mistakes and come back from it, if you can do that, it will change the rest of your life, not just in your sport, but in anything that you do in life.
That was great. Lastly, I guess, again, thank you so much for being a guest on today. For all the people out there listening, if you want someone to cheer for who's doing a ton of good on the ice and off the ice with hope of $1 billion, cheer for Akwasi. Follow him on Instagram as his journey for these next 8 months. Again, we will all be rooting for you here to bring home a medal for your country and to qualify for these games. Again, we're expecting some great things from you, both on the ice and off the ice.
You'll be the first that I will make sure to showcase all that success to. No, thank you for having me here and for all that you're doing out there. And I hope parents will go out and tune in and find out what Podium Athletes doing, because this is what we need right now in this society, for kids to find ways to play and for kids to find ways to, go after their goals and passion.
Awesome, man. Well, awesome, guys. Well, again, thank you. Cheer for Akwasi, like and follow all of his pages, and, have a good day.